Welcome back to my YouTube channel and podcast, Wonders and Miracles, where we get to celebrate miraculous moments in everyday lives. I'm your host, Liza Lawrence, and I'm so happy to have you join me today as we talk with LuAnn from Michigan. LuAnn lives on a 50-acre farm and has several miracle stories that involve animals. 2 chicken stories and a dog story, and I've heard the abbreviated version, and they're beautiful. So I'm so excited to hear all the details. I really love that she submitted animal miracles because we often don't get to hear stories like this. And I know there are plenty of animal lovers out there and plenty of miraculous experiences with animals. But before we jump into this episode, if you love miracle stories and want to hear more, hit the like and subscribe button so you can catch all the inspiring and uplifting episodes of real people sharing real miracles. So LuAnn, thanks for being here, and go ahead and tell us your stories.
Oh, Liz, thanks for having me. Well, I think let's start with the story of Dove the chicken. So this is my first experience having chickens, and we got our chickens. There was a dozen at first, as new little hatchlings, and they were supposed to all be females because I wanted hens for the purpose of eggs. I did not want to eat them. I just wanted to have hens for my own enjoyment and for farm fresh eggs. We had them in the house until they were old enough to go into an outside environment. And during this time, one of the babies, who was named Dove, and each one had its own name. Dove was a tiny little golden fluff ball, the typical little chick, smaller than the rest, lovely, timid. I would check on them every morning and every evening just to make sure everything was going okay. Well, one morning I went and I checked the box, and Dove was laying flat, just flat, flaccid, not responsive. So I scooped her up, and what I thought was her, up, and took her into the living room, and she was just lifeless, a lifeless little cotton ball fluff that fit in the palm of my hand. And my husband came up to me and he said, "You know, Lou, I told you all these weren't going to make it. You have to toughen up if you're going to live on a farm." And I said, "Well, we'll see." And I took Dove over to the couch, and I put her on a heating pad and covered her and sat with her and stroked her. And it was hours. And my husband came over a couple hours later. He said, "Well, how is Dove doing?" And I said, "Well, look at her. What do you think?" And he just shook his head and walked away. And I thought, I just don't know what to do here. I can't accept the fact that this little one is going to die. And I had been praying, and I started to pray even harder. And I said, "You know, Doug, you've got to pray with me for Dove." So we both prayed together for my little chickie. And we sat there. I sat there again with her for a little bit. And all of a sudden, she started to move and started to come around and wake up. And I was like, wow, very weak, could barely hold the head up. And I fed with a little eyedropper and eventually got stronger. And after about another hour, up, standing, ready to get back in the box with the other chickens. So it was amazing. I was just totally stoked, so happy that he was doing better. I kept him out of the box for a little bit just to make sure everything was going okay. But long story short, he went back in with the group, and he ended up being a rooster. And he's now, I still call him Dove. He's my big baby, but Doug calls him the Don. And about a month ago, I said, "Doug, you know, you didn't think that Dove was going to make it, did you?" And he said, "No, Lou, that bird was dead. That bird was dead, but I couldn't bear to break your heart and tell you. So I prayed with you. I prayed with you anyway, even though to me the bird looked dead. And I'll tell you, that bird was dead." And I said, "Well, the Lord wanted to see the bird alive, so brought him back or helped him come up. So
I
that's
love
the
that.
story of Dove, who was supposed to be a little chicken, but ended up being a rooster. So,
Which you didn't want a rooster in the first place, right?
oh, no, I don't know how. I don't know. It is what it is, but he is beautiful, beautiful.
I was going to say, do you have a special bond with him?
I do. Every time I go into the chicken coop, because I love to be with the chickens, I may take a chair and Dove will come and sit on my lap.
Really?
Or when I'm in the coop doing things, he'll kind of like make sure everything's okay, like guard my back so nobody gets too close to me, even though they're all, it's like dotes over me.
I love it.
We have a very special bond. Yeah.
That is
For a
very
rooster, and that's unusual for a rooster. I mean,
very,
he
yes.
loves me. I'll pick him up and carry him around. He's just a sweetheart.
That is unusual. Yeah. We've had chickens before and the roosters can be mean. And so, yeah, to have him have that sensitive bond with you, I love, probably from the very beginning, knowing that you truly loved him and wanted him to survive and prayed over him. That's sweet.
I just cannot even believe it. He's really, I mean, he's huge. I would say he probably weighs 10 pounds now.
Wow.
He's a big boy and he's beautiful. So I'm very
love
happy.
it. I love it. Well, what's fun too is, I know you're going to share another chicken story, but chickens have personalities.
Oh,
and I
my
don't
goodness.
think,
It's incredible.
I don't think people realize that. You think that they're just these creatures that don't, just lay eggs, but no, they have personalities. My husband and I, we would often go out and just park our camp chairs by our chicken coop and watch them play and peck. And this is kind of a funny story. We had a neighbor dog come and wipe out our whole flock one summer, except for one little chicken survived. We called her the porch chicken because she would come up to our porch and she'd sit with us, or she'd climb up and look in the window like, what are you doing in there? And and I was irritated with this chicken because she wasn't laying her eggs. And that's why I wanted chickens, right? Like, give me your eggs. So, and she was also pecking all of my tomatoes. So she'd go and just peck one tomato, like one peck. And so I'm like, I don't know about this chicken. She's kind of irritating me. And so we were deciding, should we go ahead and butcher her? Some of our chickens we did butcher for food. And I think it was the day we were deciding to do that, we ended up finding her stash of eggs where she'd been laying her eggs this whole time. We found like 4 dozen eggs.
Bury them. Yeah.
Yes. And I was like, okay, we can keep the chicken. So that's my chicken story, not a miracle story, but we did like that chicken.
Well,
she was
it did
cute.
Save her life. That is kind of a miracle story.
Right. That's true. Like, here, I'll show you my egg stash. Don't kill me.
Don't kill me.
Yeah. Funny.
Well, the second miracle story about chickens is about one of my blue Jersey giants. We have 2 of them. We got them and added them into the flock. So now we have 14 chickens, and they are really, really rambunctious. And they love to run around. You can tell they're younger than the rest of the flock. Well, one day we were out I let them run wild, and everybody else came back into the chicken coop except for BB, one of the blue Jersey giants. I tried to get her. We went to Myers and got one of those big fish nets, trying to catch her with a net. Couldn't do that. She went out into the middle of a yard open area, and she was bound and determined not to come back into the coop and not to follow me. She ended up going into the woods, and we live quite rurally. There are coyote, large predatory animals. We have hawks, eagles, owls, those sorts of things that would love to have BB for dinner. Not to mention neighborhood dogs and cats that may wander over here and there. So I thought she was a goner, and I couldn't chase her into the woods. I was just too exhausted to pursue her anymore. So we gave it up after we couldn't catch her with the net, and it was getting dark. So I thought, well, I prayed, Lord, protect BB tonight. I hope she'll be okay. So came back the next day after I got off work, trying to see if I could see her, hear her. I thought, I'm going to try. Doug said, oh, she's gone. There's no way. There's no way this little tiny baby chicken would survive in the wild. It just wouldn't happen. Somebody would have had her for dinner. All of a sudden, I'm walking around listening, and I hear this little beep, 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 beep. It was BB in the tree line next to where the coop is. So she ended up coming back all the way out, and this is like 2 acres, coming back out of the woods across to where the chicken coop is located and hiding in the brush next to where the chicken coop is. Still didn't want to come in, And then all of a sudden, the sky got dark. And if you know anything about Michigan, the weather will change on the drop of a hat. It was literally tornado type hurricane winds. And I had to leave. We had to leave in the car. I mean, literally, it was so strong a wind that I thought I wasn't going to get to the car. Literally, it was that strong. So we left, and I thought, well, that's it. She's gone now. And we came back the next day. I came back to look specifically for her. At least if I could find her body, I would know that she had passed away. Oh, and I was standing there, and all of a sudden, again, I hear this little peeping, peep, 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 peep. And she sticks her head up out of the brush. And she's this bluish, grayish color, and her head looks like the head of an ostrich sticking up, looking at me. And it's like, oh, you stinker, you've got to get back in this coop. And I just prayed at that moment. I said, Lord, I cannot do this anymore with this chicken. It's been 3 days now, and you're going to have to just get her to come back into the coop on her own, because I can't chase her anymore. So I went into the coop, and the door was cracked, and guess who comes running in behind me? BB. She came into the coop on her own.
I love it.
It to me was a miracle, because we couldn't get her to come in any other way with the door open or anything before. So that was miracle 2. The third miracle is about Frankie, our little Yorkie mix that we had since a baby. And Frankie lived to be about 12, and she died. She actually had to be put down, and we brought her home to the farm to bury her. And before I would let Doug bury her, I laid her on the couch just to make sure she was cool. Her body was cold, and I was really afraid about burying her alive. Even though I know that's not a reasonable thought, I just couldn't stand to take any chances. So I'm grieving. I'm on the couch with her, and my husband's walking around, and just it's quiet in the house, and it's just sad. And she cools off, and I take her little collar off and all that sort of thing. And the next day, my husband told me, he said, Lou, it was amazing when Frankie was there with you and you were on the couch with her. I could see her in her spirit, and she was so happy, but she wasn't really sure how to act. She was trying to kind of get her sea legs, it seemed like. She was excited, but she was unsure, and she wanted to come with us, but she couldn't. And she was just running all over. She was running in the spirit all over the place, kind of like moving all over the place. And he said she was the color of a rose mauve. And in the piano room, there were 2 angels that were with her, but they were standing at attention. And she would run around the room and kind of come a little bit toward the living room where we were, and then run back in with them. This lasted for about 20 minutes. And then all of a sudden, she went over by the angels and went right between them. And all 3 went up through the ceiling. And after that, I had to look to see the significance of that color, because I thought, there has to be a reason for that. Why would she be that rose color? And when I looked it up, it means in the Father's heavenly care.
That's so beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
And beautiful that your husband was able to see that, witness that.
I know. Isn't that amazing?
It is amazing. I
Yeah.
love that. I feel like I've read stories where people have had near-death experiences where they've passed and their animals have greeted them, their
Oh
pets.
my goodness. That's
Yes.
amazing.
Isn't
That's
that
a lovely
interesting?
thought, isn't it?
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
I
Yes.
think they all go to heaven.
I do too, right? The all dogs go to heaven story.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, they're sweet friends to us, right? And our
Mhm.
babies and our companions. And
Oh,
so,
yeah.
the Lord loves all creation and animals are part of that. And when did you first have animals have a special place in your heart? Because it sounds like you really love animals.
Forever. Yeah. And I wanted to be a veterinarian, but I ended up in another health profession. And in a way, I'm glad I didn't, because I don't think I could have handled seeing the pain of animals suffer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I ended up actually in a nursing profession, which is lovely. And I can be of such help to people. And my specialty is working with adults and older adults.
Well, yeah, it sounds like you are a very nurturing person.
Oh.
And so to nurture your animals and other people, you're probably in the right profession for you.
As I name my plants.
I love it. I love it. So yeah, just you have this connection with all creation, it feels like.
Yeah, I do. I enjoy the world.
I love it. I love it.
Place.
I do too. This is a side note. It's weird, but I can talk to my plants. My plants will tell me things.
Yeah.
Yeah. One day I know.
I need water.
I know. Like, I'm dying. Help me out here. I was in my garden one day. This was years ago. And it was one of my early gardens. And I had gotten a lettuce mix, like one of those packs that mix. And so I was weeding and I went to pull a weed, what I thought was a weed. And I heard, "Don't pull me. I'm not a weed." And I was like, "What are you?" And I heard arugula. And I was like, arugula? So I went in and I looked it up and I was like, "Oh, sure enough, this is arugula." So yeah, I've had
that's a good
one.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, sometimes if we're quiet and still, we can feel the spirits of, all living things. And
yeah, I had a plant tell me once that it was lonely, and it was a new fern that I bought, and it was named Sarah. Well, Sarah liked not a lot of light. And so I had to be careful where I put her in the house. Well, where I put her, she was alone without any other plants. I literally felt like this plant told me, "I'm lonely." So I moved her.
Wow.
She's happy.
I love it. See, these are all the fun mysteries that the wonders and the miracles of life. And I think that if we did stop and kind of tune into things, I think we'd feel that more often.
I agree. There are so many mysteries that we haven't even been able to touch in the slightest. That's my opinion. So many things are unexplored, because complexity the levels of complexity in the universe and in our world are so immense that we only see a small sliver of the reality with what we can see with our eyes. And
through our sensory system. There's so much more. Yes. Yeah. And I do love, I like to meditate. And so I do like to sort of feel the expansiveness of things. And, and I think it's vaster than we even comprehend. So much more going on.
It's amazing.
Well, fun. Well, LuAnn, these are beautiful stories, fun stories. I'm so glad that you reached out to me and that you saw these as miracles, because I do believe even these small little things are miracles in our lives. And that's my goal, to get people to pay attention to all those things.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this miracle story. Please subscribe to my channel if you liked it. You can also find me on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify. And remember to notice and celebrate miracles everywhere, because the more miracles we notice, the more miracles happen.